Hello and welcome to the DM's Travel Book Club, a guide to the inner planes. Each episode we explore one of the inner planes of existence as outlined in the Great Wheel cosmology in the role-playing game Dungeons and Dragons. And we're back once again. We've come out from Earth, we've been passed through air, and here we are in, well, the plane of elemental fire, the Crematorium.
Fire. Fire.
Yes, it's quite warm in here, isn't it, Hamilton?
It's very toasty, and actually kind of thematically so, because today was actually a very warm day. I went outside without even a jacket on.
Whoa.
You believe it?
That's wild talk. What are you talking about?
Because it was so warm. It's just getting warmer and warmer. Global warming is happening right now.
And so we thought, why not come straight to the source of it?
Exactly, yes.
Which is the elemental plane of fire. Yes, this is, what's known as the most dangerous plane. But I feel like every time we come to a plane, it's like, this is the most dangerous
plane. This, though, is like, you ain't got even, like, time to react. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Because other planes that we go to, like, we haven't gone to water yet, but to air.
Soon. Yes, air.
Yeah, air, very, you've got time to, you've got this whole gravity thing, which, yes, is a problem, but it gives you time to manage that situation because you can breathe and it's not too cold, blah, 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 blah. You go to the plane of Earth, fine, yes, it's confined, but you have some time to sort of like, okay, I now need to think of some spells that I could use, but you go to fire and it's just like, instantly, and you've got
emulated essentially.
You've literally got moments to do something about it, and if you don't do anything about it, it's too late. That's it. So that I think that's why it is the most dangerous from an immediacy point of view. Maybe from a sort of like once you've overcome that, then actually it feels the most sort of like inhabited and sort of like understandable in that it's very much like there seems to be, places to go and a ground and seas.
Yes.
It's just breathed in fire.
Up and down. We got gravity back. So that's two places didn't. But there was a quote by Philgray High Thumbs, which says, if there is a more hostile place than the elemental plane of fire anywhere in the multiverse, it is being kept in the dark. And you're like, wow, that is, put that on the poster. It's like, welcome to the most hostile place in the universe.
Yeah, I do love, we mentioned this off podcast, but one of the best things about this one particularly is the writing of this has got three sort of layers of conversation going on, or narrative, because you've got an overarching narrator who is an Efreet, who we'll talk about later who they are, but then he mentions and quotes this person Philiag Highthumbs, who is a sigillite, who he calls of the cold and dark city of Sigil, who writes what you've just mentioned there. And then there's also an editor who's constantly narrating over the narrator to like
constantly correcting
or highlighting things for the reader to help them along, basically, which is very interesting.
Feels very much, I'm sure we had something similar with Volo and Elements to in a previous book club that we did, and it was just like Elements to be like, what Volo means to say is this, and like just directly like making eye contact with you, saying, don't you even think about it, just because Volo says it. Having this Efreet, this is the first time we're having an actual guide from the plane itself. The last couple of times are people who either were brought to the plane. I think that's what happened in Earth. We had a shard, a person that had been brought to the plane, and then before that was a visitor, I believe, to the plane of Earth. So this is the first time we're actually meeting an inhabitant, and this really affects their point of view. Really affects the how we see this particular plane, which is really interesting, because before it's almost anecdotal, as a bit more cautious perhaps and stuff, whereas Efreets are very proud, let's put it that way, and they'll tell you what they think. They're not shy about their opinion. They're not what's the word, they're very to the point, honest, transparent, brutal.
Brutal. I think I mean it's kind of like, it's a very maybe it's just honest is a good way, and it's a very forthright, maybe is the word I'd go for. It's very it's not dry, it's kind of interesting, but you can feel it, you can hear the intonation of it is very much, this is a description of the place. I clearly am very proud of where I'm from, and this is how I'm going to deliver you information in a very, ordered, structured, but also with a tinge of sort of like bias, clearly, because it's where they're from, which is kind of fine. But it's someone whose sense of humor may be lost a little bit if you try to like make a joke. I think,
sarcasm would not work here on the.
Exactly.
There's a bit where it says, the more a cutter knows, the more likely he may avoid roasting in the pits of the slow burning flame for angering my people, the great and noble Ifrit. And you're like, this person would not be fun at parties.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So where's the best place you've ever been to? City of Brass. Yeah, well, outside of the realm of fire, there isn't anything. And
I think you'll find.
I think you'll find there is nowhere else. And you're like, okay, right, it was cool. But it is interesting and it's really well done. And
but going to the plane itself, it's described as nothing short of destruction incarnate, and those words you don't take lightly, And as you sort of mentioned, this idea, nothing that's either animate or inanimate finds its way here lasts long enough without a good deal of magical protection. Yeah, if you're going here, it's kind of obvious in the name, and other planes have sort of talked about it. You need protection of some sort, and it talks about later that breathing. If you're worried about breathing, maybe you shouldn't even be bothering to come here, because by the time you're worried about breathing, you're probably already turned to ash by the plane.
That's like exactly what I mean at the beginning, and as we said, it is a realm purely built on fire. And like as we talked about in other of the other planes, there are pockets of other elemental elements, but unlike in those, here fire, and as he uses it's like the purity of fire is because it's like these last for moments. If water comes here, it is instantly steam. If some radiance come in here, it's immediately burnt away.
Dispersed.
It's dispersed. And earth, it's just melted, unless it is basalt or any other igneous rock, which I believe is
some sort of volcanic rock. Yes, absolutely. Which is immune to this sort of fire damage, but that's incredibly rare, I would think, like anything like that. But just the final quote of hers: if a body hasn't tumbled to the idea yet, it's really, really hot here. Which I thought was great.
Really
but
good.
Again, the description of this place as well. It talks briefly about like the sea of scorching waves washes upon the shores of the land of fire, whilst the scalding skies rise above with firestorms and rippling waves of pure invisible heat. And you're like, it's very grand. It is incredibly metal. Let's put it that way. We're thinking of like, any metal band or rock band that you've seen in the last 20 years, any of those album covers, just pop them as you pull out the camera from the elemental plane of fire, and they'll turn to ash, and then the ash will disappear because no residue is ever left behind. But it's just, it's what you think, and probably a lot more when you think of fire.
Exactly. The fact that the land upon which you walk is such heavily dense, solid fire. Below there's a watery layer of sea of fire, which they call the sea of fire, which is a slightly condensed form of fire, which if you're of a certain weight characteristic, you will stand and walk upon that. But if you're not, if you're heavier than that, you will sink. Was it 15 feet?
15 feet,
15 feet down to the solid layer of fire. So there's two layers below, but then it's such a dense layer of fire. It is something that you can walk upon. So there is a plateau and somewhere to exist.
And on that as well, just to say, because like you said, we've got this the sea, and you've got the sort of seabed, etc. But even the air itself, we kind of mentioned it a little bit, but this idea that the air is so thin here that even creatures that can try to fly, they can't get very far. It's too much. You just can't bear anything because it's so thin, and it's like you can't escape from this. If you're like, I'll just go up into the air, it'll be absolutely fine. No, you can't, I'm afraid. No, unless you have some really good magic, you're not going to get very far.
No, exactly. You have to have a magical. Apart from their arm, they say that for every sort of like animal that can fly on the material plane, there is usually an elemental version of that that does. So there are birds that look like wisps of flame that's slightly more dense that sort of float around, which sounds really cool. But the hazards I like is just fire, and more fire. And to let you know just like how long one can last here as a person.
Please.
there are, so there is an actual chart which talks about how much damage one will take, and it's based on old school THACO, which is like to roll against. So I will translate these ACs
Thank goodness.
to
Phew.
modern ACs. Very easy. You just if it's a 10, it means it's 0, and if it's a -10, it's 20, and you just delete. You go from there basically. So a 10 is 0, and then you go all the way to 0 would be 10, and then -10 would be 20. That's basically how it works if you look at that chart. But either way,
Sure.
if you have an AC of 0 to 2, you will
Yeah.
take 60 that part fire damage per round, right? That is
Per
it.
round.
Per round, and then incrementally up it goes 7 to 5, 5, 10, d10, 4. So that'd be 3 to 5, it will be 5d10, 6 to 8, 4d10, 9 to 11, 3d10, 13 to 14, 2d10, 15 to 17, 1d10. And if you've got 18 or higher AC, which if you're a paladin,
Yes.
it's actually probably doable, or even maybe a fighter, or there's lots of other people that probably can hit. A barbarian might be able to hit that sort of AC and unarmored defense. Either way, you then take no damage. So, linking back to a show we talked about with our monks, that if you can get your +2 AC up by doing your the Kensai sword, I said in that, I was saying, you get a +2 AC. So if you got yourself an ability of like 16 AC, but if you hit the air, you get 18. If you just go around slicing the air,
You're just so quick.
You're so quick that you kind of slice the air away that you don't take damage, which I kind of
because I feel like a paladin with that much armor, but it's metal. I think you're just gonna cook slowly regardless, But
there is that exactly. So you'd need to So there are also like all these other things, like water lasts literally no time, but liquids that are will release suffers, like anyone who's around them will suffer like 2d10 points of damage. And they have like a saving throw if they're magical. They have to keep making saving throws to not burst the thing. Non-volcanic stone melts into magma in 2 rounds and boils away into vapor in 2 rounds after that, and that inflicts 3d10 damage. Even if you're like an elemental or golem, you still take damage as well.
It's not protected at all.
Unless you're basalt, obsidian, and pumice, as it said. And then non-magical metal items or unprotected metal items will melt within 2 rounds, and that will cause 4d10. So unprotected or non-magical. So yes, you may have an AC of 18, but you are going to be in 2 rounds. For 2 rounds, you'll survive. If it's based on metal armor,
you've got to make a decision,
and then you've got
quickly.
4d10 metal burning damage, and then your AC is already down. So unless you've got magical metal, where you can then make can escape this fate with an unmodified saving throw versus fire. So like you'd have to make a DC check to make sure that your magical metal armor doesn't burst into flame or melt upon your skin.
All I can think of is Raiders of the Lost Ark, and as they open the Ark, they all start. The horrible image of that. It's a great visual effect, and that's all I can think of when I see this. I just like everyone goes, "Ha! We are just melting into nothingness." Yeah, it's pretty brutal. But I think we skipped ahead a little bit. How do we even get to the elemental plane of fire, Hamilton? What cool metal ways can we do to get to this?
What cool metal ways that you can go there? I mean, think of all the really cool metal places you can go in the sort of other realms. Of course, there's always Sigil. Sigil always has doors, so I think we don't even need to mention that, but we probably will every time.
Yep.
But then
default option.
Here's your choices. You got Carceri. Yeah, you got the Tower of the Arcanoloths.
Oh yes, we've been there. Gehenna.
Or Batezu. So or you can. So those are your 3. So and the Tower of the Arcanoloths is in Gehenna. So you've got Gehenna, Batezu, or Carceri. All the fun spots. Carceri's one is really cool.
I love Carceri's one.
Where there's a pit of bones, and you need to use a bone and tap it on the portal, and if it is a bone that has never been used before, it will then open. So it has to, if it's like a tibia of a human, then if that's once a tibia of a human has been used, you can never use a tibia of a human again. So you would have to use the femur, for example, or whatever. But those are all probably done, and it has like a chart for like how rare the frequency, the rating of like the animal is. So like the DC rating, the CR rating, or sort of whatever it is, you know, how common an animal would be. Then that relates to how much chance that a bone from that animal will take. So it says, for example, like that's used to be in the Monstrous Compendium frequency ratings. I don't know if they're still about, to be honest, but you can make a judgment. It says like if you found yourself a Dread Tarrasque, or maybe like a Draco Lich or something like that, something that's not your everyday monster.
It's not something that easily is defeated.
And you found like the 17th backbone of you know, you could just drop a load of like dragon.
Which one?
Just keep dropping them until it goes boom, and it opens. So that's one way.
Yeah, because the frequency rating, it goes from common, which is like 1%, all the way up to very rare, which is 5%. So it's like
one on a D. It's a natural 20. It's a 5%.
It's a natural 20. It's a 1 to 5 on a D100. It's just like I like how you think it's like, God, they'll never get through this way.
But there are a heck of a lot of bones in a body. Do you know what I mean? Like, how many bones are there in a human body? Like,
you know what? I was about to look that up and I didn't bother because I thought you weren't going to ask. I think it's like 265 or something ridiculous
exactly.
like that.
So that's a good chunk of bone. So I think you might find like in this bit of your hand, because I've broken it, there like this bit around the wrist as well. It's just a load of tiny little bones. So I'm sure you could just sort of like crunkle a few of those around. Crunkle.
You know, like, open. You know, using that wrist session.
Like if you come across someone who maybe has grown an additional sixth finger, you know, or like has like a different growth, maybe that's something that could be a way to do it. I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I like it.
Thoughts.
just random thoughts on how to use a bone to open the bone
that come
gate.
into my head.
but then moving on to the Yugalofs of Gehenna. So yes, you talked about this, the Dread Tower of the Arcanalofs, who we briefly visited way back in our previous travel book club. What I quite liked about it is that to unlock the gate, you know, you have to get through a heck of a lot of stuff, because that tower is not for the faint-hearted anyway. One need only have a black heart, and then the editor goes, evil alignment, just to really clarify, and carry an open flame. And I just thought, what a great description. Like, it reminded me of, I'm sure we talked about it before on a different podcast, but there's that old film which was called Dragonheart, which was all about an evil dragon and a king, and they had their hearts swapped.
Sean Connery.
It is. Yeah. It's a cracking rubbish film, and I really like it, but that's what it made me think of.
I surprisingly liked it.
Yeah, I know exactly. Evil Dragonheart. Who knew?
I quite like. There used to be I don't know if it's still about the spells, but there was spells that could change alignment. There were objects and material things that you can do to change your alignment. So you could, once you got there, cast a spell to change your alignment to be able to go through, and then see if you want to change your alignment back afterwards, because maybe, you know, it pays to be evil. Who knows? You know, you might be hard to change back, but if you can get yourself through the tower of one of the, you know, filled with one of the highest CR rating, most magical monsters you can meet in D&D.
Who are terrifying. Like I keep going back to my PTSD about
I know
doing, and interestingly enough, I recently played an Arcanalof and it was brilliant. I really enjoyed it. But also I'd
love to play like as a PC. That'd be quite fun.
Yeah, I was. Anyway, enough of Curse of Strahd. I talk about it enough on our normal podcast. But also, so those are those two main ways through like different planes stuff. But obviously, we got our vortices through the plane of fire, where basically, you know, a great blaze will erupt, like a vast forest fire, or like, and the heart of that inferno will create the vortex to the plane of fire. But there's also, I mean, I might have discussed this when we talked about a primer, that the magical fire that spews from the maws of legendary red dragons can also, is rumored to draw directly from the elemental plane of fire. But it also is like, do you really want to risk such a portal?
Because as it says, like, you may be in fire, but the dragon has other means of like attacking you on top of it, like, you know, it's so but it doesn't mention here, but it does mention later that there is a embassy to Batezu in the to Bator, Batezu are the people of Bator, Bator in the City of Brass, and that there is constant travel between the two. And so that is another way you might be able to find one there, but it
Yeah,
doesn't
have
give you
sort
a
of an
particular one.
embassy. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I quite like that.
Yeah. So that's also another way in.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But going back to the hazards then, so obviously we've discussed the fire problem, like everyone can see that as a big thing. Is there any other hazards that we should be aware of if people are wanting to get on their, I don't know, their magical fire amulets to protect them from this? Like, fire is
it's
nothing.
also hard to breathe because
Yes.
not only is it hot breath, but also it is toxic. And
Again.
the air is a mixture of toxic gases, many of which are flammable and in the process of burning. Beyond that, the stuff is very thin and chock full of poisonous vapors. The net effect of all this is the body must make a saving throw versus breath weapon each round or suffer 1d10 points of damage. You can protect yourself by obviously like slows or prevents poisoning, negates the effects of any like sort of toxics.
Hold your breath, the
And
usual.
Breathe fire, breathe magma, protection like airy fire, or all these sorts of things which are kind of like, or just not be able like help yourself not breathe. Like I could think of other ways you might be able to fashion some form of you could imagine you make yourself some sort of like air pocket that you could kind of like
gas mask of some sort,
exactly.
but with it hopefully not
like a gadabout. Gadabout could work from Spelljammer, so they're a thing.
Yes, big bowl, isn't it? Yeah.
It's a magical creature that sort of like creates a bubble around your head. So
that's it. Yeah. Like one of those like 1960s sci-fi astronaut suits
mixed with the sort of alien face hugger.
Yes, it just
mixed with a butterfly.
It's quite an interesting image. I seem to remember. But the other thing to note, compared to say Earth, which obviously was just more, it was very dark and very compact and stuff. Here, like because of the blaze, everything is very well lit. Beautiful illumination in almost any conceivable color, from the yellow of a campfire to the blue of an eternal flame, which is, I think that's incredible. There's this vast sort of spectrum of color that's obviously constantly changing and flickering and stuff. But what's interesting is that despite this brightness, this light that you can see, it's much harder to see through because obviously it's changing all the time, unless you have flame sight. So your vision is only reduced to 120 feet, which I don't think is too bad, considering most of the time it's like, oh, do you have dark vision? Well, you only see 30 feet in front of you and all that sort of thing. So I don't think it's too bad, but it's a good thing to know is that you might not be aware of an incoming attack from 300 feet away, and it's just constantly going, because you'll have to listen out for it perhaps because you can't visibly see something in the flames.
Exactly. And I think but what I like about it is that obviously you can't take your sunnies with you because they'll be plastic or glass and they will just melt
into your eyes.
But it says you can buy some nice smoky quartz vision spectacles, which I quite like the idea of, these sort of smoky quartz, very shiny.
You just look so
240
cool.
feet.
Looking
cool, hanging out, sitting on the sea of fire. There are also lovely things. It mentions the elemental pockets. Which, in the plane of fire, these pockets can offer flammable explorers a refuge from the relentless inferno that surrounds them. But the problem is that these are generally like, they all obviously disappear, and we mentioned that. So this one is actually not so much an hazard. This one is actually more of the respite. And I mentioned this, that like, even if you have, it talks about like stone and how long that might last. Well, if you have a very serious amount of stone, pocket of stone will last, will decrease at 200 yards per day, 20 yards per day, sorry. But that says if you've got a 10,000 mile across pocket, which that will linger for 880,000 days. So that is a long period of time. But as they say, in the eternity, which is 2,410 years, right? And they say in the eternity that is the universe, that is a blink of an eye. But also in that, you have to have, but 1,000 miles will last less than a year. So like even 100 miles lasts a month, basically, less than like a month of February. And so, you've only got a very short amount of time for like even large areas of rock.
It's interesting because obviously compared to Earth again, that was talking about like how everything's much slower and they deliberate and take their time because they have time, they can wait for this sort of thing. Whereas fire, they are constantly burning. It is constantly. So I like the idea again if you're describing a respite where they're doing a short rest, and they can see that the flames are biting away at the pocket that you're in, and it's just slowly consuming it, and you can't can't say if you're going to get interrupted in your long rest because there's an encounter, etc. And you're like, yeah, but we might need to move and we might not be able to take that long rest after all because our pocket has completely diminished in the time that we've spent a couple of hours here. So it's just such a cool way to just compare and contrast how
keep you on
the
your
pace of life
toes
is
that this
different.
does. Yeah.
Exactly.
The Earth did have the thing that pockets of air contract as well, didn't it? As much, so that was kind of, it does have a
Yeah,
similar.
it was always a slow push in,
Yeah.
essentially. Yeah, that's how I saw it as well. But there's some other dangers as
There it
well.
is. Yeah.
We have something called detonation. So classic
Yay.
from time to time. Yeah, he's like, hooray! What else can kill us? Well, a cloud of deadly explosive vapors manages to coalesce before igniting. So this is basically this idea that gunpowder is constantly in the air, and just a simple like sort of spark could just set everything off, essentially. And just this idea of suddenly just having you like, what's that coming through the flames? A huge explosion, essentially, which it's threats to everyone. It's not just people who aren't native to the plane, but it's just it's basically it's a save versus breath weapon, and it's 2d10 points of damage whilst the successful one cuts it in half. So it's not necessarily big, but it can really throw you off if you're trying to sneak somewhere or if you're in the middle of combat and there's somebody accidentally sets something alight, even though or sets something off as a sort of environmental thing. So detonation, it's very similar to, again, going back to the Earth one, that idea of an earthquake. And if there's too much movement by someone in the environment, that's when basically a tremor happens and the Earth starts filling around you. So I like the idea that maybe is something a player does that sets it off in some way. They have to do some sort of roll for it. But it can also be luck as well. Don't want to take that away, but I like the idea that you effed up on like your roll. It's a natural one. Well, guess what? You stepped in the wrong ashy cloud or something, and it's there's just the kinetic energy, like like when you always see that thing of somebody turning on the light when there's gas in the room, and just that spark just goes and it just explodes or something like that. That's what I imagine it would work.
You always see them in slow-mo in movies and stuff, don't you?
Exactly.
I do like the next one, Shadowfire.
Cool. So metal.
Just makes me think of, as thinking Naruto, the Amaterasu, which is that black flame. But I like how it's like, it really just is, the word of it is that it's a cooling flame. It's a flame, it is the shadow of fire. It looks like fire, but it's to the naked eye, it looks just like the rest of the plane. However, close examination and magic like true seeing indicates that something is amiss. The size of a shadow fire pocket could be termed as elemental pockets, but they're far cooler. And to those who are physically adapted to the plane of fire, they're actually dangerously cold, and you will even take 2d10 points of damage every round spent in that. And non-native beings who are sort of like got protection from fire will take only 1d10 of damage, whilst if you are someone who hasn't got any protection, you don't take any damage in there because it's a nice cooling flame.
It's like a meta, like a nega fire or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
I just feel like, again, it's like maybe we take the risk and just like shimmy out of our stuff and then jump into the shadow fire whilst we work out what to do next. Like it's the nega elemental pocket of safety, but you don't know how long it will last. And what a great name though, Shadow Fire. Instantly very metal. Yeah.
And then, so with that, then, as I think we've also mentioned, then it got the hazards. Moving about, as you said, it's actually a lot easier because you can walk on all the things that we've just talked about. So that actually is like, hey, there is something easier. But once you've got beyond the fact that, oh, this is terrifying, I've been able to manage maintaining my armor from not melting, I'm not melting, I'm breathing somehow or not breathing somehow, I'm able to walk on this land. Cool. High five, guys. Now, oh fuck, what's that coming over that hill is the next thing, because it's then you've got the inhabitants of this land, and there's a lot of stuff here that might want to eat you.
There's this talk about, like, I believe our guide is like, well, some people who are, would talk about the natives of this planet as being all hot-tempered and aggressive, and that may or may not be true. There is evidence for it, and I'm like, all these people here, they're going to be aggressive. If you're eking out your life on the elemental plane, you are surviving, and you have to be, because if I think it's that sort of thing, your environment is going to make you as tough as possible. So as soon as somebody else comes in, well, I'm going to take advantage of this situation. So you have very so much like, I would describe these creatures, anyone that lived here, sort of almost like powerful, has maybe a warlike mentality as well. so yeah, we've got stuff like obviously the elementals, as we always sort of talk about, stuff like fire minions, mephits, Harjin, I've never heard of those before, Gen, plasmids, giants, drakes, hellhounds, and flame spirits.
Yeah.
Most notably, though, is salamanders.
Yeah.
There's like almost like an evil race that like sort of lives here by their powerful nobles, and we come across one such sort of leader later on when we talk about sort of powers that live here. Um, there's also, and now I'm going to get to this, there's Pyro 4, this sort of chaotic evil elementals that fight endlessly against their Hellions, their lawful good counterparts as well. So we talked about that sort of idea that the Blood War is not part of this particular this planes, because it's all about the outer planes. Here's another example where we could have warfare in some extent and have battles between both. I mean, fire, it does seem to be the most warlike. So having fights with Earth, the elemental plane of Earth, and also water as well, totally makes sense on that part.
And you can imagine red dragons hanging out here as they did in Critical Role season 2 or with 1. Sorry, even because that's where Kordak. No, Kordak.
I can't remember.
Whatever it was, the big red dragon. That's where
the big red dragon.
He was in the city of like there. But yeah, and then there's also like lovely things like black flies, glowing hornets, as well as
lots of beetles
bugs.
and insects as well,
beetles.
which surprises me a little bit. But I guess it's horrible. It's like, what else is horrible? I know, bugs, and they put those in as well.
And then lava worms, flamelings, fire bats, beasts, and other predators. And it also mentions as well earlier in the thing about the pockets of. It was a nice little quote about the pockets of like respite. So where you find a pocket of water for a moment, or a pocket of earth, and where they intersect. That be aware that just like a watering hole in the Serengeti, or like in the jungles of, I think it says the jungles of the Beastlands, that's where the predators will be waiting, because they know that's where you will go to get
absolutely
respite. So
it's your oasis, right? And so you have the predators wandering around the oasis.
Be always doubly aware when do the deer at the thing going, have a drink,
quick. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so not only is it a diminishing oasis, these elemental pockets as it's being burnt by the fire, but there's also people there watching you, ready for it to get destroyed, and then people come and kill you, essentially.
Or just to come and have a nice drink and then just go, all right, thank you, I'll have a meal with my drink. And but then the key and critical ones, as we've mentioned, the person writing this tome is the Efreet, the noble Efreet, eternal enemies of the Jinn, called the elemental plane of fire, our home. We are such an integral part of this plane that our bodies are composed of basalt, bronze, and flame itself. Although we are not so simple as to be wholly labeled evil, which I think is I think this is one of the few where it kind of starts talking about the fact that we need to stop. Like nothing is elementally evil, to take a point, but we are all forged of the same flame, and there are a few among us who might call self-serving and arrogant. But there are a few among us who one might call self-serving and arrogant, I will admit.
I love that word of like all forged by the same flame. So they'll always be united in a cause, presumably against the Jinn. But that's what a cool sentence I found. I was just like, whoa.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
And it then waxes lyrical about the city of brass and the magnificent fortress that we have that spreads out, and we have outposts throughout all the flame and fire, and it's all very written in this very like, we're great.
The black fist which floats upon the sea of scorching waves. It lies near the Isles of the Scorching Bones, where rumor has it the bones of some long dead race rest upon the flaming sea, and you're like, so how was your holiday to the city of brass? Oh, okay,
it's kind of great. It's very written in a very like over the top way. You've also got the Azir mentioned here, which are like a dwarf-like race of honorable creatures who dwell upon the elemental plane of fire. They reside upon and within the elemental pockets of earth that stand in the blazing sea. These master metal workers make their homes in towers of iron, brass, and steel. Foolish rumor says that they laid the foundations of the city, but this is naught but a cold and baseless lie. And it said no, and then the editor goes, the Azer won't comment on the matter. But it's kind of like you'll get cut cubes of tunnels and mines in which they work. And I kind of like this idea of like this is the ultimate Forge world. You know what I mean? Like
100%.
you've got the ultimate mining world of the plane of Earth, but you take what you find there and you bring it here to forge it. Like if you're doing we need to make the sword to kill Vecna or whatever. This is the part of the journey. You need to get the runes from underneath the bird, the Sphinx in the elemental plane of air. You then need to go mine in the elemental plane of Earth to find the ultimate purest form of adamantium or steel. And then you have to take it to the plane of fire to be wrought and wreathed in flame, and then you must singe it in the waters of the plane of water or something like that. You know, like that's the kind of...
It does feel, like you need an epic quest to visit all 4 of these elemental planes. I definitely feel like, because I do feel like when we come onto it, I don't feel there's any reason you would come here unless it was to get some sort of big magical weapon.
That's kind of what it feels like. This is to make the elemental blade of ultimate power. It's like
the 4 elements. Yeah, exactly.
And maybe it can do para elemental tricks off it, and because of that, you can like cast when you hit with the blade.
Cool.
You could choose like different elemental effects, and you can merge them when you like maybe as like I don't know, you could do that as like, what's it called, those artifacts of power sort of thing. You know, those ones have it as like a standard, then it has like was it like awakened, and then you know the ones the things that Matt Mercer came up with.
Oh right, okay, yes, it's almost. Yes,
we called them artifacts of power for our version.
Yeah, our version of it. Yes, I can't remember exactly. Some sort of boon or so. I know it's what the pantheon, the gods would give.
The gods would give,
the weapons that gods would give you in Critical Role. Yes, no, I know what you mean. I'm just like, we had to call them artifacts.
And so there was awakened and exalted, and you could have that as like you get just elemental, then you get para elemental, and then quasi elemental.
That'd be very cool. Yeah, like an elemental. A quasi-elemental sword of vacuum, and you just suck people into it as you...
Yeah, I love that. That's so cool. Yes.
Yeah, it's just like, I'll just take all of you. Well, let's move on to the actual powers then. So it talks about 3 in particular. We've got Imix or Imix, depending on where you're from. I'm go for Imix because I think that sounds pretty cool. We then have... Imites, yes. Zaman Rule as well, which is basically they're sort of the 2 opposites of. So we have Imix with sort of the prince of evil fire creatures, whereas Zaman Rule is sort of the opposite, the good version of that. Who also leads the salamanders as well, which I thought was quite good. And here's a little gossip on the
goss, the EastEnders goss.
Honestly, I proper went when I read this, which sounds so silly, but there is a rumor that Zaman Rule is the child of Emix, and that's hence why they are at odds to each other, because they don't agree with how the other one acts. And I'm just like, gasp, you know. I've got my Judge Judy out, I'm like my Trisha, you know, Jerry. Exactly, I'm very much in that sort of vibe, because I was like, oh my goodness. So I thought that was a great reveal right at the end of this particular paragraph. We also got the Tyrant King of the Fire Elementals, Kossuth, which is the
neutral sort of
completely neutral. Again, our wonderful guide Ifrit says obviously this person is very great, but he's not as great as our great Sultan himself. And then the editor's like, He is. He's like the Tyrant King of the Fire Elementals. So I don't know who this Great Sultan is. Don't listen to this person. It's pretty bad, Kossuth. They're pretty bad.
It's like, I had to keep removing the section that he says he's a power, because he's not a power, despite our narrator's suggestions to the contrary, which I like. It's very funny. But there's a nice little bit of like backstory to them that Zaman Rule took a big fight to to Imix, completely underestimated the power of him, and is licking his wounds as he speaks, but has sort of vowed to never overestimate his own power and underestimate those of his enemies. So there's a little bit of like,
I like that. It feels like an Aesop fable type story. And ultimately it talks about Emix's sort of like power that realistically people think that Emix could wipe the floor with Zaman Rule essentially, but because they're having another fight classic with All Hydra in the elemental plane of water, it's like forces are divided in that sort of sense. So again, I mean, it does this obviously with every single plane we've gone to. It just decided that there are connections between powers that we've yet to come to yet, and there's like a little bit of connection to it. So it's again another fight that we could see that our players get involved with, our characters get involved in some way. And it's like, which side do you want to be on? Do you want to be on the flame side, or do you want to be on the water side, or maybe you just want to be completely neutral, just stick with the tyrant king or the fire elementals? I don't know. It doesn't feel great either way.
Exactly. There's no good choices. There's no good choices on this plane at all, to be honest. I don't think. As a general rule, I would just suggest the best choice is to not be there. I think that is the only good choice. But in terms of proxies, it does mention these powers don't really hold proxies like others, but there are people that you are so indebted and or sort of like loyal is the word I was looking for to their power that you can consider them to act in the form of a proxy. So you have Asgaroth, who is a pit fiend from the Nine Hells, who is sort of enlisted by Imix to sort of lead his armies, and in doing so actually just beat Zaman Rul at this battle we mentioned, and now is on the way to fight Ol Hydra. Which just sounds, and he says it's because of his like ability. He was said he never could find his way up in the pit fiend ranks in battle.
So just changed jobs essentially and went to somewhere else.
Went sideways to promote, and in doing so is very indebted to his new boss.
Yeah.
And then
what a great! I love that as a character. That's such
great.
A cool thing. And you're like, I may be in too deep now, but I did win in that recent promotion of just always beating up the bastard
with a
son.
better promotion. Maybe that's the thing. There's a way in. I can get you a better deal.
It's like Zaman Rule, Zaman Hool, or Zaman Drool. There you go.
Zaman Drool.
You also have Garn.
IMAX, I'm in.
Oh.
Sorry.
You also have Garn. I love this. It's a bit like when we talked about Zorn last episode. Those creatures. I just like words that are just like cool to say. So like Garn is a powerful and intelligent salamander who serves the cause of neutrality and the ultimate master, which is Kossuth. And whilst he appears to have his natural powers greatly enhanced by the power he services, he doesn't seem to have any real contact with the master. So again, it's always this. I always quite like this, where it's like either these powers are constantly interfering with the lives of their proxies, like we saw in our last one with the elemental prince of Earth, making that proxy into something totally evil. And then here it was like, I don't touch this at all. But it's like, it's nothing short of an assassin as well, Garn is, which is doesn't even negotiate with the enemies or lead the armies. So it's just an assassin salamander.
It's cool. Like when I like the word, when something begins to cause the Tyrant King too much trouble, Garn sees to it that the difficulty comes to an abrupt end. That is it. It's just like Garn just does what Garn does.
Garn goes, I will see to it. And you're like, absolutely. Well, then moving on. Let's see some of the more popular areas of the elemental plane of fire where we can go. So we've already mentioned the city of Brass. It's obviously well-known space in the plane of air. Plane of fire. God, I'm rushing back and forth between because it's too hot here.
Back.
These magnificent fortress of towers, domes, spires, and minarets stand upon.
Those are the towers you get upon
on the towers, right?
They're the sort of the towers that you get on like mosques and stuff like that. Is a minaret. The sort of like those sort of like pointed towers.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. But it's on a great hemisphere of solid brass, which is about 40 miles across. And you were saying before we started recording, so we've talked about this before, that in every single chapter, every single plane that we go to, there's usually a map, and the map for the city of Brass is fine. It's just a little boring, and we were saying that maybe obviously if this was updated for 5th edition, we'd see like real big detail in the stuff we've got on this particular map. It's got some elevation stuff to indicate levels, but it looks very empty when we know it's probably jammed packed full of housing and big buildings, etc. It just looks very sparse, and I sort of suggested whether or not it's maybe our guide has gone, here you go, best of luck to find where any of these places are. But it is, I do think the maps, from what we've seen already, I do think they're on the simplistic side, but maybe that's for you, the GM, to change.
I do feel this book, comparative to other ones, and we said it before, is a bit light on the ground. It feels a little bit like rushed comparatively. I feel like there's a few things you're like, maps could be better. and they just rush through the sites, and there's hardly any compared to when we were doing the other planes where we'd have like 5 to maybe 10 different,
so many different halls,
which were too many.
Yeah, we were like, no more, please.
Yeah, exactly. Whilst this is inversely just like, well, you've got one, so just give me a lot on this one, then just make it really tasty, because it kind of, you get 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 paragraphs on the City of Brass in the top 2 so basically 1 column long, and there's a nice bit where it talks about there's a funny bit where it says like, oh, there are other humans here, so you will feel more comfortable.
You're like, no, I won't.
Yeah,
they're probably enslaved
feel
in some way.
welcome. Yeah, exactly. But there's also like, it talks about the fruit that they have out in the trees.
Yes, the
fire fruit. Don't eat that. Then it says there's the Sultan's Charcoal Palace, which is like, just mentions it very briefly. There's a fountain of fire.
Yeah, the breath of the Sultan, which can be seen from any quarter of the city, so it must be quite big, or quite bright. You're like, whoa.
But once you've got this very brief sort of section of information, it then just goes like, although Riddell would never or could never relate such things, there are a few more things that a Playmore might need to know about the City of Brass. A few thousand, really, but there's only so much space between these covers. First of all, they work hand in hand with the Potato. Oh, by the way. But the thing is, like, yeah, but you can make these covers wide apart.
I know.
Because it feels like, you haven't got a lot here. It's just, there's a wormhole, a secret section of the Uncity that even the Efreet haven't tumbled into. It's a hidey hole for salamanders. Perhaps a diplomatic and silver-tongued soul could convince those within to allow him sanctuary. And that's it. And then
that's cool, though. Yeah.
It's really
cool. What does that mean?
But I want that map. I want a whole guide to the City of Brass, and it's a little bit of it's a real shame. I think there is a planar thing that travels the City of Brass, and maybe in that there is more. But it's a bit of a shame, really.
It's scant on the details when you think this, and this is again what I come to is that why would our players come here if it wasn't for picking up some magical item or jailbreaking someone out of it? Because ultimately, as we've mentioned before with the elemental plane of Earth, same thing here. There's definitely some content here which hasn't aged well and is definitely legacy content. So it talks about slave labor, etc. So it's just a bit like, why can't we? Maybe the Sultan has gone missing, and the Ifrit blame the Jinn or the other sort of genies, and so war is about to break out, and maybe someone is to charge you because I don't know, you're very good at finding things. I don't know. It's because it's a dangerous place, and if someone goes missing, someone powerful goes missing, it's like, well, what could have done away with them, and how are they managing to do this in the elemental plane of fire, which is dangerous itself? So I don't know, it just feels like there's not enough for me to go, I want to go visit the City of Brass, because I know it's very famous, but ultimately I'm like, there's nothing here for me to, I can't think of anything to pull players into just yet. Maybe, and if I think about it, maybe I can get somewhere. But
exactly. I've said the only thing I can think of is forging a flame.
Maybe something to do with the fire fruit in some way. Like, it's poisonous to us, but maybe, I don't know, you've been sent out.
Better places to go to get something poisonous. You might be better off going to the
maybe you have to go
Abyss.
get it for some sort of like bake-off competition of the multiverse, and you like have to poison the Paul Hollywood Modron.
Paul Modron would. I don't know. Mollywood.
Mollywood.
But then that's it really. Then you get the Crimson Pillar, which weirdly is an orb. I still don't quite understand that.
I think that was the missing. It feels a bit like
it's a 10-mile diameter sphere called the Crimson Pillar, but whatever, which is just basically, it's bloody hot, surprise surprise, and that's really all there is to it. And Kozov lives there. And
even if you're so far away from it, you still get damage.
To take 1d4
damage. Yeah, exactly. It's like, why would you go again? Maybe you go there because Kosov has requested you to be like, something's not right, but I can't intervene because I'm super neutral. Yeah. But it's just
You're
a bit like,
chatting to me from far away, so can we just chat from here? No, you have to come see me.
Yeah, I'm a god.
This is a tease meeting. And then you got the Crucible, which is another hot place.
Rests on an island of obsidian ringed by a vast sea of molten bubbling platinum. Lovely. Yum. Send that on a postcard.
Yeah. It just says there's a person with skill with hammer and anvil is legendary, and he can fashion any manner of magical weapons for those who meet his price. There you go.
The island itself is covered with a forest of tree-like plants whose bark and leaves consist of pure metals. So again, I can imagine it's like it's one of those art gallery things that you go to and you're like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, like
it's too sharp.
There's the Mercury fountain in Barcelona, isn't it? The the Miro place, which is kind of cool.
It is cool, but yeah, it's that something going. I bet all of these are sharp, and I'll probably get so maybe I have to go for a shot after I touch something.
Exactly.
Here.
It's not quite. It's a bit worse than like you ever had like I've had like metal splinters, you know, when I've been doing work and stuff like that, and you get a metal splinter. That is a bugger. I mean, glass splinters are pretty bad as well, actually. But
I've had glass splinters before. Yeah. Oh.
Anyway, then the plane of burnt dreams.
Well, what a way to end! What a place to go! Yes, this idea of a solid fire that forms the base of this plane rises up above the liquid flames of the blazing sea. It's just it's
known for two really great things as well. I love, which is the Temple of Ultimate Consumption.
Excellent, good.
Is that not just McDonald's?
I've named it myself. Emix has ruled it with his legions. This is my place. Ultimate consumption.
Ultimate consumption. Which is great. And second bit is the great. This is where the battle was fought.
Between Emix and Zaman Rule. Yeah.
There's supposedly a great artifact of untold good was supposed to be used to decide that battle, and maybe that could be hidden around. The artifact was lost and vanished between the waves of the blazing sea before Zaman Rule could bring it into play. If this is true, anyone procures the relic could name his own price, or could use it for good. But you know,
look, I feel like if you're going to the plane of evil, plane of fire, you're probably not on the good spectrum unless you've been forced to do something.
You're going to go pick up the, but you're going to get the good blade to do the good thing. That's why.
Again, I think as something I think I said right at the beginning when we did our previous travel book clubs, sometimes I really struggle to think, like visualize what this place is. All I can see currently is the "this is fine" meme of you sat there and everything's on fire. Because it just is like more and more flames.
Of like when you see like Formula One tracks in the summer and you get the haze or something like that. It's that haze effect or desert haze, you know, and like, but then just flames wreathing everywhere. I can kind of just imagine it. It just doesn't sound fun. It doesn't. I bet it's beautiful to look at for that instant.
Yeah, maybe it's taking a prisoner back, somebody that's escaped from the elemental fire, plane of fire, and then they bring them back.
Or vice versa, getting someone out. You know, that's the thing.
The jailbreak thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Or it's your way into battle. Like there's you think it's a way in. You've got like a way of elementally going there. Maybe you're a druid, so you think I can survive as I can become a fire elemental.
Yeah,
you know.
I guess it says in that sort of final section, it says that people come to the plane of fire not only to challenge its reputation, so the idea that you could gain one because you have conquered some part of it in some way.
Well, that's the Ashari, trials is a thing, and you could be taking that sort of that idea. It's like you must go and get me, you just a fetch quest of like, I want a ruby sapphire from the city of brass, or something like that, and I want this from the plane of earth, and it's just a challenge, in order to. That's really it's fetch quests. I mean. D&D has that ability to go down that road, but and we make it much more role play heavy, and I think you can bring some role play into this by just getting involved in the Ifrit Jinn thing, or you could, or just helping a salamander, with something, or I don't know, you could add something to it, but I feel there feels like more role play potential in this setting, in the fire, than there does in any of the others that we've had, just based where they're going to be much more like, oh, I'll help you around, or oh, let's go for a float about in this big dome, or it doesn't, or let's go on that pirate ship that's really cool, or let's find Bahamut flying around in his temple, which I think is amazing.
I think because ultimately it's sort of saying like, deep within the primal essences of their very being, that they know that fire is power. So I definitely see that what you're saying, that role playing, but it feels like time you come here, I would make a real focus on that political aspect, that war is coming. Maybe we talked about it before when we did Dragonlance, and Game of Thrones is similar. This idea of raising tensions, and then suddenly something sparks it off, and then the war between all the elemental planes, and it's coming from the fire starters. Essentially, it's coming from that initial push through from them, because they're the ones that are quick to anger and will just go out in a blaze of glory. And that could be quite interesting, I guess, from that end. Like you just get caught in the crossfire, so to speak, and then having to make your way out. That could be quite fun indeed. The other thing to think
Thoughts
of,
abounding.
yes, but we talk about spell keys a little bit sometimes. Here, like to create spell keys, they always take on a fluid dance-like movements, which I just love that as a description. Like, you know, that they are like these leaping flames, or they're sort of almost like a fluid, like when we were talking about before about that, like there's that liquid molten lava like flames, and then a solid bit at the bottom. I was thinking almost like the densities of liquids. So like it's very light and then medium, and I just thought the same thing here is that you pull something maybe from the molten lake, and it's just a little bit lighter than air perhaps, and it just moves around before it sort of dissolves into some sort of spell. Anything like that, just as a bit of flavor, I just thought was really cool. The only thing to say though is that there's no key that's ever been discovered that can cast water like spells from here, which makes sense.
Or ice.
Or ice, absolutely.
No, none of that business. None of that business here.
None of that business. Not at all, not at all. Well, I think, unless there's anything else, we've come to the end of our...
we finally have got through. We've walked the coals, as they say.
Gosh,
You know what I could do with? A bit of a plunge into a bit nice icy plunge pool, and I'm hoping that that's where we're going next.
Yes, next time on DM's Travel Book Club, we are off to the elemental plane of water, the bottomless deep. Before we had the boundless blue, we're now going all the way down to the bottomless deep, just a big, vast ocean. And yeah, we're definitely cooler, but any less dangerous? Well, I'm sure we will find out.
As we all know, with deep blue seas, they're terrifying. So I'll say, you know,
that noughties film of Deep Blue Sea.
Yeah, I remember that film.
It's a cracking. I love that film.
It's LL Cool J's in that film, isn't it?
LL Cool J. Not Samuel L. Jackson's in it very briefly.
Yes. It's got quite a cast, if I remember correctly. I think
it's an absolute wild film.
LL Cool J is the chef.
Yes,
and he's fighting the shark and it has a parrot, and he's fighting the shark in the kitchen. I remember this.
I just remember, and then I remember.
I could watch that movie again.
I think there's a bit where the female protagonist shimmies down to very little clothing and then electrocutes the shark, and you're like, why did you have to shimmy down to very little?
The 90s. Because it's the 90s.
For goodness sake. Anyway, well, that's next time. But until then, you can come check out our sibling show, the DM's Book Club. There'll be links to it all over the page, etc. Check out all over the world. Wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also listen to previous episodes of our previous travel book club about the outer planes, all 16 of them.
I looked the other day. So weirdly connected to this, but because Karseri and Bator are the two top, and Gehenna are the three top ones that people want to watch. So clearly they want to find ways. They want to find the ways to the plane of fire.
Well, this episode's going to be super popular then, because if everyone likes fire.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can go check out those, and obviously we'll be back next time with the elemental plane of water. But until next time, I keep forgetting every time we do this. Do we have a sign off?
Yeah, we just say we see you on the flip side of the planes.
See you on the flip side of the planes.
Bye, everyone.